These are the things that I believe fasting does to our walk. And again, it might not be a nice, encouraging, uplifting message, but it will be the most beneficial message for you. And again, if you put it into practice. Please don't turn Jesus off, the word off, and go, well, that's not for me. I don't want to fast. And maybe you used to fast. You know, the Lord said to me, you're going to share on fasting. I want you to fast. And I said, I don't want to fast. My flesh still doesn't want to fast. My flesh does. I love food. If you know me, I love food. The Lord said, no, I don't want you to eat Saturday. All day Saturday, don't eat and don't eat Sunday morning. Oh, Lord. All right. And my son Ezekiel chooses that day on Saturday to make what do you do? Do you make beef cheek tacos? Melted the meat until it was soft and breaking off. And I had that last night. I mean, how beautiful that was. But I wanted to. But the sacrifice of letting that go and allowing my body, my flesh, weakens when I don't feed it. And I feed my spirit gets stronger. So there's a lot of benefits when this happens. Number one benefit when you start to fast is it renews your spiritual vision of Jesus. It makes you see him as he really is. How does this happen? In many ways, obviously. But the reason why it happens is basically you are choosing to fast. Now, it depends on the length of your fast, of course. So we're talking about any length between one meal to 1 day to 2 days to 3 days. And some practical tips with that. If you want to go more than 3 days, I would encourage you to wean off coffee for 5 days before you start. Not just coffee, wean off sugar, wean off soft drinks as much as you can. If you wean off that for 5 days, more likely, and drink lots of water when you fast, you won't get a headache. But most people will get headaches because it's a coffee headache, a sugar, it's all the toxics coming out. So the first 3 days is the hardest. But you can make it easier for yourself if you wean off for a week, cut off all that stuff. A week's even better than 5 days. And by the time you fast, if you want to do 3 days or 5 days, because 3 to 5 days is the hardest part. If you do, after 5 days, the toxics leave you, your body and all that, and it's not so, you don't get headaches, and you actually get clearer. Your mind gets clearer. Your mind gets sharper. And you don't feel so hungry, usually. If you do get hungry pains, drink some water. Drink a whole glass of water. That'll be your meal. But it helps. And it'll give you, once the 5 days is through, you'll be surprised how much easier it is in the first few days. I've been through many, many fasts. And some long fasts, and I'm telling you, the first 3 days, 5 days, sometimes the hardest, and you're not even motivated. Sometimes you don't even feel like reading. You're trying to read and you're tired and you're unclear and all that stuff, and you're just hard to read. But after 5 days, you'll be surprised how much God's speaking to you. And it happens the best way I can explain it to you, it happens so ever gradually, sometimes you don't realize how much your spirit is being fed. Sometimes you don't realize how much of the presence of God you're drinking in. You don't realize how much of the word that's coming in. And it just but you start to feel in these, what happens to me, if ever I go on a good long fast, I start to almost get agitated with unbelief. I get agitated. Why haven't I believed this like this? Why don't we just believe for miracles? What's wrong with the church? And that's okay. That's a good feeling because it creates a hunger to press into him. It's a hunger that something's not right. Why do we have so much unbelief? Why do I have so much unbelief? Why have I not believed you for the miraculous like I should have? And then it creates a lot of things. But what it does do is gives you a clear vision of who Jesus is. Because you are not feeding your flesh, the way it works is your flesh gets weaker. If it gets physically weaker, it's not as loud. Remember when Jesus says the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak? Now, he's referring to the flesh being weak in the area of listening to the voice of God because it doesn't want to listen to the voice of God. But when you don't feed your flesh, it physically gets weaker, therefore your spirit gets stronger. Does that make sense? In Galatians chapter 5, it says, the spirit desires against the things of the flesh, and the flesh desires against the things of the spirit, so that we don't do the things that we want to do. So the flesh has its desires, and it desires things that the spirit doesn't want. But the spirit desires things that the flesh doesn't want. It's at war with each other. That's why the flesh is weak. The reason why the flesh is weak is because it's loud with its fleshly desires. So when you choose not to eat, it's a great discipline against the desires of your flesh. It's letting your spirit rule and reign and take dominion and say, no, you will not just get everything you want. Does that make sense? You're telling your flesh, I will take dominion. I will rule over you. I know you want to eat, but you're not going to eat until this day. That's a powerful thing. It's a powerful discipline because it helps you when the devil does try to tempt you in your flesh. You say, no, I'm not going to give in to the appetite because you've trained yourself. You created a habit, a lifestyle that the flesh doesn't rule you, you rule the flesh. Does that make sense? Most of the religions of the world probably can agree with this, is fasting. They'll have some fasting in it. Some religions don't do it the right way. I don't call it a fast only because you can eat after sundown or so. So you can stuff your face at that time every single day. So I don't think that's a fast. I mean, Jesus did it. Elijah did it for 40 days. Moses did it for 40 days. Jesus did it it's phenomenal. And they operated in so much power because your flesh got weaker, your spirit gets louder. And so when you choose, again, let's talk about something longer than 5 days. You'll be surprised how much time it takes just to cook a meal, prepare a meal, sit down and eat the meal, then clean up after the meal. It probably, I worked out in my mind, probably a 3-hour thing a day. That's my guesstimate. You might think, well, I don't cook 3 meals a day. I go out. Well, you still got to drive half an hour to that place, sit down and eat, and then get back to where you were. Like, take an hour off that day. Take an hour off another day. Like, it's 2 or 3 hours a day. Those hours spend time in God's Word. So we're not talking about just starving yourself. We're talking about spending time with the Lord. And He feeds you. You start to get fed with His Word and His presence and praying in the Spirit and praying in tongues and worshiping Him and going for walks. Whatever you do to connect with God, get in the Word. Let the Word wash over you. It cleanses you. And then because you have cut off, like when you're going on a fast, you should be cutting off, again, a long fast, cut off movies, Netflix, games, Facebook. Just cut off all that stuff because what you're saying is, I want a concentrated time to seek your face. If it's 1 day, do it for that 1 day. If it's 2 days, do it for that 2 days. If it's 3 days, do it for those 3 days. But you're consecrating and say, that's it, God. I'm putting this time aside just for you. And because of this happens, the stuff that you would have fed that's no longer there, you're feeding yourself with the Word, you start to see Him as He really is. And I can't explain it any other way. You just to see, and you see how beautiful He is. You see how loving He is. And your eyes see the beauty of the Lord because you're beholding Him through His Word. You're beholding Him through worship. You're looking at Him. You're saying, God, I want you. I desire you. You're praying. Something powerful about praying. It yields your members, your mind, your thoughts, your emotions to God. It yields yourself to God. When I'm not in a prayerful state, and I've been prayerless, I don't feel like praying. I don't want to seek God. But when I discipline my flesh, and no, you need to pray. You have to pray. I get myself before God and I start to pray. All those thoughts, those emotions, the distractions come off. I start to see the Lord as He really is. And He is magnificently beautiful. The Bible says the entrance of your word brings light. So the revelation knowledge gives your spirit light. And His light it envisions you to see Him. Just by being in His Word. The entrance of your Word is a lamp unto my feet, a light to my pathway. So what's happening? The Word's bringing light in to see Him as He really is. And we fast to know Him. I must say, like I wrote down wrong motives of fasting, and God uses these wrong motives sometimes. He's done it with me for many, many years. Listen to this. Fasting to get power. Fasting to get deliverance, so you get power to deliver people. Fasting to be more anointed so your ministry can grow, or so you can grow, so you can ultimately succeed more in ministry. These are all well and good, but the greatest motive to fast and pray is to draw closer to God. Because sometimes you might think, you get these motives that, and that's okay. God uses it. Like, the fact is God created us to want to succeed, to win, to be successful. So we're going to pay the price, be disciplined, so we can get ourselves in that place to succeed. But if it's your only motive is to grow, to be anointed, to be have power, I don't think it's the best motive. I believe the best motive is, Lord, I want to know you.